Hi there, Sean Kevlin here again with a III Executive Exchange. Today, our member company Munich Re is joining us. Mike Quigley, he's the head of property underwriting and multi-line risk quantification at Munich Re, United States. Mike, good to see you again and welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, for having me.
So we did III and Munich Re did another RiskScan survey. We always get really good, interesting results out of these surveys, and proud to partner up with you all in this. From your perspective, where did you see kind of the highlights in terms of this rapidly evolving risk landscape? What were some of the more significant parts of the survey from your perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the most significant findings from RiskScan 2026 is that insurance buyers and sellers are becoming much more aligned in how they view risk. Across the consumers, businesses, brokers, insurance carriers that were surveyed, we saw broad agreement in the types of risks that all viewed as pressing right now, and that's including things such as cyber, economic inflation, artificial intelligence, business interruption, and natural catastrophes. I think what further stands out in the report is that these risks they're no longer viewed in terms of being isolated threats. For example, a cyber event can trigger business interruption, or geopolitical risk can trigger a supply chain disruption that then also leads to increased cost. So the survey reinforces that today's environment is defined by complex risks such as these that can amplify each other. I think if I think about the report, something that surprised me about the findings, it's really the fact that the non-peak catastrophe risks really moved to the forefront in this year's survey. And historically, when we think about natural catastrophe risk, we think about major hurricanes and earthquakes driving and dominating the discussion. But today, it's severe convective storms, floods, wildfires, and other non-peak catastrophe events that are being seen as frequent high-impact events. And our own Munich Re Nat Cat service reported that insured losses from these non-peak events hit a record $88 billion last year in the U.S. And that shift in the prominence of these types of events in the survey results this year reflects the reality that consumers and organizations are experiencing, and really underscores the importance of resilience planning.
Yep. Well, and you hit on that. The secondary perils, we've been talking about that at III. We have been seeing record years, to your point. The last 3 years have set records, and this last one was the third most second billion-dollar plus events, and the previous years were number 1 and 2 as well. So it's certainly a growing concern. What do you think, going back to the resilience, what are some of the areas that you see in terms of businesses making themselves more resilient?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sean. I think that the most important step for businesses and communities is really moving from a recovery mindset to a resilience mindset. And RiskScan 2026 shows that organizations increasingly recognize the threat from natural catastrophes, particularly non-peak perils, but resilience begins well before the loss occurs. And businesses should therefore think about investing in risk assessment, strengthening their business continuity planning, improving supply chain resilience, targeting investments in mitigation measures that will reduce the volatility and vulnerability before loss events occur. And then for communities, I think resilience begins with a combination of stronger infrastructure, modern building codes and practices, thoughtful land use, and just a greater awareness to the local hazards. I think those are some of the things that, at least on the business and community side, are important. I think it's also important to highlight that the insurance industry plays a critical role here too. Insurers and reinsurers are uniquely positioned to provide risk insights, modeling expertise around such risks, and also provide incentives that encourage prevention and loss mitigation. So ultimately, we need to move away from viewing insurance solely as the financial safety net following an event, because it's increasingly a strategic partner in helping businesses and communities understand risk and build resilience beforehand.
Yeah, it's absolutely a report we did a few years back with the National Institute of Building Sciences. We called ourselves co-beneficiaries insofar as insurance is one area, but we've really got to kind of embrace it throughout the economic ecosystem in order for the community to really begin to make some differences in terms of the community becoming more resilient. So I absolutely, we're all in this together, in other words, right? And we've got to have more appreciation for that. In terms of narrowing it down to one takeaway on RiskScan from your perspective, what would it be? What would you say for business leaders should be the one thing they should take away here?
Yeah, I think the one takeaway is clearly that today's risk landscape is extremely complex with many potential interdependencies. I think the survey shows that leaders can no longer think about cyber risk, cat risk, economic risk, et cetera, as separate issues. These forces increasingly interact with one another and can compound losses, operational disruptions, and strategic uncertainty. So I think the businesses that will be successful in the future are those that take an integrated view of risk management and resilience.
All right, Mike, this is the time when you get to ask me a question. So what do you got?
Sure. And thanks again for the opportunity to talk a bit about the RiskScan 2026 and for the partnership with III and Munich Re. But if I step back from this RiskScan and I'd be really interested to get your perspectives on what, if you could ask every homeowner, business owner, or policymaker to do one thing to help build a resilient future, what would that be?
Yeah, and I think you and I, having gotten to know you more through this and other exercises, I think we're big proponents on resilience, right? And I'll maybe narrow it a little bit more just towards the homeowner first. The first thing, as you well said, is we always think it's a good step just to know what you've got in terms of your insurance policy. And if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to your insurance professional about that. But then also you need to take a moment as a homeowner, as a business owner, to really understand where you're living and how you might need to be managing your risks better. It's what we were just talking about earlier about being in this together and making sure there are things that are under the homeowner and the business owner's control that they can do outside of just insurance. Because to your point, this isn't just anymore about detecting and repairing after catastrophe. It's about the need to predict and prevent. And with the home, we see three main areas that are in your control that you can take a look at and better understand. The first one is just honestly your roof. It's your first line of defense. You want to know how old it is, how it was installed, is it up to standards? We now have the Institute for Business and Home Safety's fortified standard for wind and hail resilience on roofs, and those are important, and they're making differences in states that are adding more and more resilient fortified roofs. The state of Alabama, for example, is becoming a great example of how you can get your roof in a better place and you can make your home a heck of a lot more resilient. The other is fire, both in the house and outside of the house. So in the house now, we've got technologies that you can simply plug into your wall that will monitor for arc fires in-house, which is a really fantastic tool. We've even featured it on these executive exchanges with the CEO, Bob Marshall of Ting Labs. You pop that device into the wall, it monitors, it gives you an update every week, and it's making a tremendous amount of saves on house fires. It's also, the more of those Ting devices that you have out there, you're able to monitor the energy grid more. And Ting has been able to actually identify glitches or potential vulnerabilities in wildfire prone areas. And this is again important. And just going into the wildfire, if you live in a wildfire prone area, we just put a briefing out that said, the entire United States for the most part is vulnerable to wildfire at this, and we need to make sure you understand what that means. How is your landscaping in your house? Where do you have burn-prone items too close to the house? Is your ventilation system in the right place so that it will withstand the embers in case there is a fire? Things like that. And beyond fire, I would say, water and flood are part of over 90% of insurance and catastrophe claims. And so first, again, going back to the insurance part of it, flood insurance, it's just a remarkable gap how many Americans don't have flood insurance. And I would simply recommend to get it. Regardless of what some map may tell you from some organization, we're seeing more and more different things like hurricanes hanging around more inland and dumping more water in places that perhaps it hadn't previously. We just saw that in the last year or so, and flooding in areas in Tennessee and such. So make sure you have flood insurance. Just go get it. Don't ask even the questions about it, in my opinion. And then in the house, the water leak detection devices that can monitor the flow of water in your pipes. In case there's a burst, it can shut off the water. It can save you a significant amount of damage and make you more resilient. I have been through a water damage in my own house, and I can tell you it's one of the least fun things that you'll experience in life. So there are lots of things that you can do. You mentioned all the things as well on business and getting the cyber coverage, business interruption, good continuity plans. Just again, make sure you're working directly with your risk and insurance professional to know where you're living and how you can live better and prevent what we are now able to predict more as well. So, Mike, I really appreciate your time. It's been great working with you this year on our RiskScan. I'm excited if we can do another one of these because, again, we always get great feedback and we get great findings as well. So thank you and Munich Re for partnering with us on that.
Yeah, thank you as well, Sean.
All right. Mike Quigley, thank you very much for joining us. Munich Re US, thank you for joining us on the RiskScan survey. I'm Sean Kevlin. I'll see you again on our next Executive Exchange.